everyone. Welcome to another episode. I'm so excited about today's guest, Joanne DiMaggio, and I've got her book right here, and you can probably see it in the background there and her next to the flowers. The Inner Light, How the Beatles Planted the Spiritual Seed in Our Souls. And Joanne is, she's been a professional past life regressionist therapist. You also do soul writing, which we're going to talk about what that is. You've written books and articles, and you were also the president of the Beatles fan club in the 60s. And so it's so exciting. Welcome, Joanne.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. So, I found it very interesting, especially, I was born in 1962. And so you're a little older than me. So you were a teenager at that time. And I was just trying to my experience was so different than the teenagers or older of the 60s, seeing my grandparents always wearing their hat and gloves and, the different things that I saw. And then you guys got to see the hippie side and the drug side, which I thought, oh my God, those people are crazy. Those long-haired weird, because I didn't know, and I'd listen to my mom and dad's music, Trainee Lopez, or, the different music. And so it was really cool to kind of try to transport myself back there and kind of feel the vibe. But yeah, so just share whatever you want to share on this amazing journey you've had with the past life and how the Beatles got you into it and George Harrison and all of that.
Well, let's see. So the Beatles came to the United States in February of 1964. That was just a few months after John F. Kennedy was assassinated.
Yeah.
And I really think that I know my generation took that really hard because for us, the Kennedys represented hope. They represented the light and the darkness. Whether that was true or not, I don't know. I mean, that's just how we felt.
Yeah.
We were very invested in them, very invested in the future because of them. So when he was killed in November, it just created this void for us, I think. And so we were in a state of mourning. And a couple of months later, here come this group from England with this vivacious, happy, upbeat sound. Plus, they were darling. They were cuter than anything, and they lifted us out of that terrible state we were in. They filled that void, that we had. And so when we were getting involved with their music and them, we could put everything, all the ugliness of the 60s sort of, behind us because we were focused on the music. And so I always thought of myself as more than just a fan. I loved the idea of networking even before networking was a thing. I liked the idea of gathering like-minded people. And I was going through some stuff in my personal life that involved estrangement within my family because my grandmother had died and my father had had an argument with his sister, and we were suddenly cut off from that side of the family. And so that whole theme of finding family was important to me personally. And I think from a psychological point of view, that's what really kept me so deeply involved with the club. I was, needing to find something to make up for all of that loss. So I did start a fan club. I got my friends involved. And eventually I started writing to Beatle fans that, back then we had Beatle magazines, and they had in the back, they would have a list of pen pals, which probably, I don't know if people still have pen pals, but you could write to people all over the world. They would put down that they were interested in getting letters. So I started writing to them and saying, hey, I've got this fan club. Would you like to join? So that was my first entree into marketing. Okay, all of the things that I was doing eventually had other purposes later on in life. So I grew the fan club and had it for like 8 years. A lot happened during those 8 years, obviously. We could talk about that. As far as the fan club was concerned, I learned a lot as far as there was no internet back then. So there's no way to get news. The only way we could get news was through the DJs on the radio or the newspaper or a magazine. And of course, by the time that I got that news and put it in my monthly newsletter, it was old hat by the time the members got it. I did a monthly newsletter. My mother had this very old, clunky Underwood typewriter, it's old manual typewriter, and I would be pounding on the keys. I did one newsletter at a time, and then I finally got carbon paper, and then I got real sophisticated and got a mimeograph machine. So I was building up my membership. I was building up the newsletter. I love to write, so the newsletter, kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And yeah, so that was the actual birth of the fan club phase of it. I was one of many, many, many fan clubs in the United States. Any fan could start a fan club. That wasn't anything new. I think at one point there was about 100 independent fan clubs across the United States.
And I'm glad you told me how, because I was wondering as I was reading your book, how did she find the people to become a fan, and how did she find out the latest on them? Yeah, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's just now it's with the internet, it's just changed things so much. And you think about, I used to have pen pals, and it was a thrill to have a pen pal when I was a kid. And yeah, it's just so different. Gosh, it's like
Yeah.
another world.
Yeah.
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 And then you had something happen where, with they wanted to shut you down or something?
Yeah, the Apple Records had an office in New York, and they had a fan club that was the national fan club. So at first it was called Beatles USA Limited, and then it was called the Official Beatles Fan Club. And I think it was like $250 a year to be a member.
Now, is this $2.50 or
Yeah,
yeah, not 250, right?
$2.50. Yeah, yeah. And I don't know what triggered this, but all the independent fan clubs in the country got a kind of a cease and desist letter saying, we don't want all of you little renegade fan clubs across the country. You need to be a part of us.
Mm.
So they wanted all of us to become a chapter of the national club. To do so, we had to have X number of our members join that club. And so we couldn't have anybody in our club unless they joined the national club. Well, of course, this created, quite a stir. And I, for one, wasn't going to do it. I thought, who are you to tell us that whether we can have a club or not? So I enlisted the help of Jim Stagg, who was a disc jockey at WCFL radio in Chicago, one of the two stations that was playing Beatles music. And I wrote him a letter. He printed my letter in the Chicago Sun-Times. He had a Sunday column. And he intervened on my behalf. He did try to get in touch with the club in New York. They didn't return his call, but everything suddenly got quiet. So I thought, just the fact that I got him involved, they backed down, right? Well, that few months later, they started all over again. And so this time, most of the clubs in the country gave in and joined the national club. I think I was one of three that was a holdout. To me, it was like the whole David and Goliath struggle, And so to sweeten the pot, the national club said, listen, Joanne, we'll make you national chapter director. How do you like that? And to be national chapter director means that all the clubs in the country will report to you, and you'll be the liaison between us and them. And we'll give you a stipend, like $25 a month. And it was on an Apple check. So I could tell people I had bragging rights that I was on Apple's payroll, even though it was never enough money to do much of anything. And all the fan club, all the pictures that they were selling, they had to come through me. So I got a chance to get one of every picture. The best part of it was that we were getting news quickly out of the club in New York, and we were also getting really beautiful original photographs and other perks. So there was some benefit to it. Also, um, there were like individual fan clubs for the four different Beatles. So the official Paul McCartney fan club was up for grabs, and so I was able to take that and head that one up at toward the end. So we had the clubs going. Like I said, I had mine for 8 years from 64 to 72. And then, of course, the Beatles broke up. But we still hung in there because we're thinking, well, we still love the Beatles, regardless of whether they're together or not. Plus, we kept hoping they'll get back together, right? That was always like our eternal hope. And Something happened, and George Harrison got a copy of his newsletter, his club's newsletter. And I have to say, George Harrison's fan club was one of the best ones in the country. The president of that fan club was friends with his family, and they did all sorts of philanthropic work. They were wonderful. I don't know what was in that newsletter that upset him, but he went into the office at Apple in London and he said, "What's this? There is no more Beatles. There shouldn't be any more Beatle fan clubs." And so Alan Klein, who hated the fan clubs in the first place, got called in, and then he called in the heads of the New York club, and that, as they say, was the end of that. So the clubs were disbanded. Although a lot of the clubs that had been folded over into the National Club as a chapter ended up going back to being independent clubs. So it wasn't like they got rid of the clubs. I gave mine up. I didn't want to do it anymore because at that point I was already in my early 20s, and my dad kept saying, "You're too old to be doing this. What are you doing?" And I was already almost out of college. So I had spent all my high school years, all my college years running this fan club, and I had gone through quite a bit. I had to learn about conflict resolution. I was getting hate mail for a while. We had people coming to our meetings and disrupting them. There was a lot of anger toward the end, a lot of tension between fans because there was tension between the Beatles. We were kind of picking up on that. So, the fan clubs ended then in
Well,
70.
I got a hit that why George did that because he felt it was hard for them to break up, and it was hard, the feeling of it, and so it's like, well, we're not together any, there's no more Beatles. Why should there be a fan club? And it was a reminder and
Yeah,
emotion, probably, yeah.
yeah, that's what Paul said. But we were told that there was something personal in the George Harrison newsletter that he read that he didn't want out there. So I don't know. I mean, we probably will never know at this
Right.
point. But anyway, needless to say, that was the end of that.
And
Yeah.
you had been reading a lot of metaphysics and different things before that as a teenager.
Yeah. Yeah. Before the Beatles came out, I would spend my summers at my grandparents' summer home in Indiana. And we didn't have TV or anything out there. So I would bring books and I was reading. I was already disenchanted with Catholicism at a young age. I was raised in an Italian American Catholic family on the south side of Chicago. All right. So the subject of reincarnation was never brought up. That word did not exist in my neighborhood. And it didn't exist in the church either. And so, even as a child, I had a lot of questions about the Catholic faith because some things didn't make any sense to me. And so, whenever I would ask, I was sort of just, the Catholic faith is the one true church, and you shouldn't ask any questions, just accept it as faith. And then, no, this doesn't make any sense. So I started reading on my own books about Edgar Cayce, books that were written by Jess Stern and Ruth Montgomery, who at that time were some of the leading metaphysical writers. The first book I read about reincarnation was The Search for Bridie Murphy. which was published in the mid 50s. And oh, all of a sudden, it all made sense to me. And I got really excited and involved in trying to learn as much as I could. Then the Beatles came out, and I just forgot all about the metaphysical stuff. I just put it on the back burner and put all my time and energy into the Beatles, which I did for those 8 years. And then, of course, everything ended in 72. I finished college. And got married, had a family, pretty much went to sleep, how I describe it. And then in 1987, Shirley MacLaine's book, Out on a Limb, became a miniseries on ABC. It was aired for a couple of nights in January. And that was the big wake up call, I think, for me and for a lot of sleeping metaphysicians, because in that, she's talking about reincarnation, right? So I was like, my eyes just got real big, and I thought, oh, there it is again. That's what And after that, 1987, almost immediately after I watched that miniseries, I did what I did with the Beatles. I plunged right in, started my own past life research organization, and I became involved with Edgar Cayce's Association for Research and Enlightenment, and helped form the Heartland region in Chicago. So I was involved with the ARE, involved with my organization, which was called Plexus. And when ARE would bring in speakers who talked about reincarnation, I would ask them, will you come and speak to my group as well? And they would come. I was doing a journal. And the only thing I wasn't doing regressions because I wasn't certified to do them. So Henry Leo Bolduc, who was a big speaker for the ARE, became friends with me, and I confided in him about my own past life journey. And he goes, Joanne, you know more about past life than most of the therapists that are out there. Why aren't you doing regressions? And I said, no, no, no. I'm a writer. I want to write about what's going on and then share that with everybody. And he kept on me and kept on me. Finally, I said, okay, okay, okay. So I got my hypnotherapy certification in 1990. And I have been doing this work ever since. Then I went on and got my master's in transpersonal psychology from Atlantic University and my spiritual mentor certificate. And so now I'm glad Henry pushed me, because I use the case studies from the regression work that I do as the basis of the books that I write on that topic. So yeah,
And
so
you studied Dolores Cannon as well. She was starting in the 60s.
no, I did not. I did not study under her. No,
But as you know of her, of
I
course,
know of her. Oh yeah, oh yeah,
must be the same type of thing that you do, the
yeah,
regressing, getting
yeah,
the
yeah.
information. Now, well, okay, I have to say though, I was laughing out loud when I was reading your book and when you were like a younger, and the Catholicism and what they were telling you. And there was one part where you were thinking to yourself, do you mean to tell me that if I'm like crossing the street and I get hit by a car and die, and I had eaten meat and it was a Friday, that I was going straight to hell because I didn't have time to go to confession and confess? And think God
Yeah,
would really send a kid to hell because she ate meat and didn't go to
yeah.
confession, got hit and died in the spot. It just doesn't make sense.
No, that was one of many questions I had. It made no sense to me how a loving creator could do that to his creation was beyond my understanding.
Yeah.
Which is ironic because, of course, they changed the law later and you could eat meat on Friday. But then it was a
Yeah,
mortal sin. And if you did it back then, you went straight to hell. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. Just go straight to hell.
and then,
So
of course, they say the Catholic Church took out the reincarnation stuff at the Council of Nicaea. Anyway, it was in there in the scriptures, or
that's my understanding that it was taken out then. It was considered, I think the word is anathema, so that if you believed in that, you were going against the church. And it's a control issue, right? Because if you think you only have this one life,
Yeah.
and that you can erase anything you do by going to confession,
Yep.
that's how they control you, right? If you thought to yourself, oh, instead of sin, I believe in karma, and I have to sort of self-police myself, and this is not my only life. then how can the church possibly control you? You know, the whole idea of sin is what controlled people. Those were the questions that I had. I mean, when I was a little older, I had that question about eating meat on Friday when I was about 7. Then when I was about 12, have it in the book where I went and saw a B-rated movie. I saw Gypsy with
Oh, yeah.
Natalie Wood, and we were not allowed to see B-rated movies. And so somebody must have told one of the nuns at school, and she sent those of us that went to the movies together, she sent us off to the confessional. And so we had to tell the priest, that we went and saw this movie, and we all had to say like 10 Our Fathers and 10 Hail Marys, and then you walk out squeaky clean again, And I thought, this doesn't make any sense to me, So I was always on this questioning. Matter of fact, when I was in high school, I also went to a Catholic high school. One of the nuns called me her little atheist
Mm,
because I kept asking questions. I said, asking questions has nothing to do with whether I believe in God or not.
right.
I just don't know that I understand or believe in the rules that you're giving me. So yeah, so when I went back to it in 87, it's who I am. I am a reincarnationist. It's not that I believe in it. I know it's real because I deal with it every day. And so I have been satisfied now to understand how the universe works.
Mm,
Because, from that point of view, from an esoteric point of view, it made perfect sense to me. So I finally have my answers. So the reason I wrote the book was I was questioning, how did I go from point A to point B? How did I go from being passionate about the Beatles
mm,
and being raised in this Catholic family, very conservative neighborhood, blue collar neighborhood? How did I then get so involved in esoteric studies to the point where I, have my degree in it, have my, I've been doing regression work for over 30 years. It's just my passion. And so I thought, what is the common thread here? And I started thinking, was it the Beatles? Somehow was it them? And so then I started looking back at I've kept all my newsletters from 64 to 72. I went back and reread them, which was a cringeworthy experience, let me tell you, because when you read something you've written when you're 14 years old, you're like, oh my God. Anyway, yeah, and then I started doing some research. I have about 60 Beatle biographies, and I started looking through there and, kind of reading what they were saying, or mostly George and John were
mm,
saying about different esoteric topics. And I was actually surprised that there was that much that I uncovered, because I had like 16 pages of notes almost immediately, on topics like reincarnation. Which John Lennon was real into Kundalini energy, astrology, numerology, tarot. And so, and of course, George was heavy into the Eastern mysticism. So that, plus them going back and re-listening to some of the lyrics of their music, and how did that music come about, understanding all of that, I could see then very clearly the premise of my book is that they planted the seeds
mm,
in our generation, and they didn't blossom immediately. It took 10, 20, 30 years, but eventually, we caught up to them, so to speak, because they had a big influence on us. We were like little sponges as Beatle fans. Everything that they said and they did, we took it in. Um, there were some bumps in the road, like when John made his comment about Jesus being, they're more popular than Jesus. We lost a lot of members then. When Paul admitted they took LSD, lost a lot of members then. When they went to India, because we couldn't resonate to, like, what in the world are they doing? We lost a lot of members then as well. But there was a core group that stuck with them,
mm.
and just took it all in. And whether we used it right then and there or put it on the back burner subliminally, and it just didn't pop up until many years later. That's the journey I was interested in tracing in the book.
And so you must have been regressed
Oh yeah.
first, and then got into it and stuff. And how many times have you been regressed? Do you have an idea of?
Oh, in the beginning when I was first getting into this, I was like a regression junkie. I mean, I couldn't get enough. There was one life in particular that I was interested in, and so I was going back into it over and over and over and over again. Most people, Marla, only usually do one session, one regression. I don't get repeat clients. And that's because a past life regression takes you to the core issue. It doesn't look at symptoms that you're dealing with in your current life. It goes to the root cause of what you're dealing with. And so when you uncover the root cause, many times there's a healing that takes place. And then you don't feel the need to revisit over and over again.
Like, do
Yeah.
you set an intention? So let's say a woman, because I'm a matchmaker and a coach, and I deal with women who and myself, I've always tended to pick the same type of guy. And, I've had divorces and picking the narcissistic, verbally abusive. So let's say a woman keeps picking this or a pattern, and could she go back and see maybe she had some karma with a husband over the past lives, and then they look at it, why, and then that can heal her. I guess, yeah, speak on that a little for the
Sure.
relationship thing.
Yeah, that's interesting that you would bring that up because that's my current research project is on soulmates.
Okay, yes.
Soulmates or cellmates, as I'm calling it, because
Elmate?
cellmates, like
Yeah,
prisoners.
yeah.
Because people assume that a soulmate is a romantic partner, and that's not really the true definition of a soulmate. So I am having folks contact me who feel that they may have soulmate or cellmate relationship going on to go back and look and see, where did it originate? What happened in that relationship? Who did what to whom? Uh, and why did they come back with you in this life? What's the reason? What role are they playing in this life?
But what now people ask about the twin flame. You're going to go into that too because they think that, oh, I want the twin flame.
Yeah, that's different than a soulmate. And, twin flames usually are twin souls. They come in because they have the same agenda. In other words, they're both working on the same issue, they have the same goals in mind. They're working on the same project. Edgar Casey and his secretary Gladys were twin flames. Jesus and Mary were twin flames. Sometimes we're not even in the same lifetime together. So there's a little bit more to that than the soulmate relationship, which we have many, many of those. So yeah, I am gonna explore the difference between them. A lot of people, I get a lot of clients and they're just so starry-eyed about finding their soulmate, and they just assume. One of the reasons I'm writing that book is because I had a situation of somebody close to me who his wife left him after only like 2 years of marriage because she started to get involved with reading about soulmates and twin flames, decided he wasn't it, and left him. And here, she knew the kind of work I was doing. I'm thinking, I wish she had just talked to me first before she jumped to this conclusion. So trying to set people straight and understanding what these terms actually mean, because I run into that all the time, different terms in different terminology within the esoteric studies. People misinterpret them, and then they come to the wrong conclusions, and then they go down that path, and it can be very hurtful to themselves and to others. So I like to get to the bottom of it, like what's the true definition of this? What was the original intent behind this,
Well,
phrase that we're using. So
let's
yeah,
get into the soul writing. I do some automatic writing, and it's so great. So I guess it's interchangeable. Is it kind of?
no,
No, it's
no,
not. Okay, what?
no.
Tell me.
Um, so Edgar Casey did a lot of readings in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and he called it inspirational writing.
Mhm.
When I did my thesis, I changed the name to soul writing because if you go on Amazon and you type in, you want books about automatic writing, you're going to get everything on the occult. If you type in inspirational writing, you're going to get all Christian genre books. So, like, neither one of them was the true definition of soul writing. This is how I define it. It's writing in an altered state of consciousness. That part is the same. Okay. But what I say to people is, prayer is you talking to God, and meditation is God talking to you. Soul writing is you taking notes.
Okay.
That's the way to look at it. There's a difference between automatic writing and soul writing. And ARE actually listed automatic writing as the number one no-no if you're trying to expand on your psychic abilities, that and the Ouija board.
Okay.
And I was doing both when I first got involved in this because I didn't know any better. I'm just reaching for my cheat sheet here. So the with automatic writing, the reason they said it's a big no-no is because of the danger of possession. And they had a lot of case studies at the ARE of people coming to them having gotten into some serious trouble with the automatic writing. Matter of fact, there's a book called Venture Inward by Hugh Lynn Casey, Edgar Casey's son, in which he writes about those people who got into trouble with the and the reason they got into trouble is because many times they do not take the steps that are needed to safeguard themselves. So in other words, when you're doing soul writing, you always do it in a state of meditation. You never just consciously start writing. You always surround yourself with white light, like a bubble of light, so that it's impenetrable. And because when you open yourself up, those lower level energies can get in. And you always say a prayer of protection with soul writing. With automatic writing, those steps are usually skipped. With soul writing, the information is coming from within. It's coming out from your soul. With automatic writing, it's often coming from an outside source. All right. With soul writing, you're writing in with the collective consciousness, so it's we. Like when I'm writing, the first thing that I get is, my dear soul, we are with you always in love and in light. It's always the collective we. With automatic writing, it can be the ego-based I. I am here. I am telling you what to do. With soul writing, you're never told what to do. That you're not commanded to do something. Your soul is gently nudged. With automatic writing, sometimes they're demanding that you get a message that impels you or compels you that you have to do something. With soul writing, you have a total awareness of what you're writing right when you're writing it. With automatic writing, so many times you don't know what you're writing till it's over and then you read it. With soul writing, your handwriting stays basically the same as it does in a conscious state. With automatic writing, the handwriting is not the same. I remember a couple of times I got really cocky and I skipped the prayer and I skipped the white light protection, and then some little imp got into my auric field and I started writing really tiny, kind of up at an angle. And I thought, oh, I got the wrong person in here, and I had to work hard to dissipate that energy. So and the last thing I'd say is that with soul writing, you just watch as the handwriting reveals itself. With automatic writing, many times you have no control of your hand. It just goes. So those are the basic differences that I put together based on my studies for my master's program. And I read a lot of professional journals, a lot of psychiatric journals in which they used automatic writing when they were working with clients. So I tell people, stay with the soul writing. It's a lot safer for you. And interestingly, when we apply that to the Beatles, a lot of very famous writers and composers used the same process in doing their writing that I just discussed with the soul writing. And with the Beatles, a couple of with Paul, Yesterday and Let It Be, those came to him like in a vision and a dream. He was just downloading it. uh, it was like a gift. It was given to him. And John Lennon with Across the Universe and Nowhere Man, same thing. It was a vision. It was a dream. It came to him that way. And if you read about Mozart and Beethoven, they were talking about how it's like it felt like something was being, they knew something was coming from above, like they were downloading it. They didn't use the word download, obviously, but that's basically what they were doing. So there's a difference between the two. I do teach the soul writing. Matter of fact, this summer, I'm going to be doing a series, summer soul writing series for the ARE. It's going to be on Tuesdays from 10 to 11:30, all on Zoom. It's going to be July 16th to the end of August. So if anybody wants to do a deep dive into soul writing, you could look that up, and maybe might want to join us. I'm also going to be doing a webinar on May 29th, I believe it is. So it'll be like a 2 hour, hour and a half or 2 hour sort of an overview of soul writing, what it is, how to do it, and all the areas of your life that you can apply it to. So I have found it to be one of the most transformational tools. I use it many times when I do regression work as well. I'll tack it on to the end of the regression because it gives people the backstory sometimes, or offers guidance. Like people will say to me, well, this regression was all well and good, but what do I do with this information? The soul writing will give them that
And how
perspective. So
does it help you open your intuition and psychic abilities?
absolutely. I have a whole chapter in my book on soul writing on how to use it for psychic development.
Oh, wonderful. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So we'll include the links to your upcoming events
I appreciate that.
And how long is the typical regression?
It goes anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours. It depends on the type of session they want. And it also depends on how much they download. Some people will get it. The longest part's probably me getting them into that relaxed state. And some people, they get a lot of information. So they're going, telling me their story. Other people, one, two, three. It's like they don't get much, or they'll say, I don't see anything else. And so we ended. So anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours.
Well, Joanne, thank you so much. It's just been a delight, and I can't wait to dive into some of your work. And everybody, leave a message below, a comment, and let us know. Have you had a regression? Have you tried automatic writing or the soul type of writing? What's your experience been? We want to hear about it. And thanks so much for spending this time with me, Joanne.
Oh, my pleasure. I had a great time. Thanks for inviting me.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.